Hey guys, I just wanted to have a quick little talk about the question that's coming up a lot online right now. Is Baldur's Gate 3 overrated? Is this game just overhyped? I've seen a couple people say it's the game of the week, the game of the month. Everyone's going to forget about it. It's just the new hot fad. And I wanted to talk about that because I find it interesting. I find the parallels between it and something like Elden Ring quite interesting because Elden Ring sort of had a phase where it went through that as well. And I also wanted to kind of use this video as a way to talk about my initial impressions after about 30 hours into the game because I'm nowhere close to beating the game and putting out a full review, which I will do probably in like, several weeks or a month when I actually get through this game. But I wanted to kind of use this to talk about the question in mind, which is, is it overrated? But also talk about just my initial impressions of the game and, you know, my my initial pros and cons of it. But let's get into it. So the question of is it overrated, I find very interesting because you sort of see this whenever something gets big, right? It could be anything from games to movies, shows, whatever, like Game of Thrones, back in like season 4, everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's overrated," when it wasn't. It was a banger, right? You could see like the Marvel Cinematic Universe when that was building up, everyone's, "Oh, it's overrated." Now it's fat ass, but back then it was really really good. Elden Ring, went through this a lot. Everyone saying, "Oh, it's overrated." Everyone will forget about it. Kind of ironic that I'm talking about it because I was actually one of the people that wasn't the biggest fan of Elden Ring. So, that's kind of funny. But I actually think that my thoughts on Baldur's Gate 3 are very similar to my thoughts on Elden Ring. For those of you that were around, when Elden Ring was going off, I made a video that made some people upset in the comment section. Some were nice about it and some were not so nice about it. But I made a videos about Elden Ring saying I think it's a good game. I think it's quite good. I'm not personally a fan of the open world. I prefer the more linear design, and I think that Sekiro and Bloodborne, probably Demon Souls remake as well, are better games than Elden Ring. I think Elden Ring is good, but I don't think it's as good as some of FromSoft's other titles. And I kind of think the same thing about Baldur's Gate 3. I think the game is really, really good. And I can completely understand why some people think it's 10 out of 10, game of the year material. However, I personally have some issues with the game. And they're issues that I know are super subjective, and a lot of people are not going to have it all. So I can understand why a lot of people think it's 10 out of 10. But for me, it's just like Elden Ring, where I'm like, I think Divinity Original Sin 2 is still a better game. Like, I still think, from what I've played so far, about 25 or 30 hours of Baldur's Gate 3, I think the Divinity Original Sin 2 is better. As just all around, honestly. But let me kind of talk about why. So I have 3 playthroughs going on, which is why it's going to take me so long to, review this game. I have a playthrough with my friend Josh where I am a human fighter, use big sword. It's my guts character. He's an ex-soldier, and he's the type of dude that'll just throw down. He's not interested in talking. He'll just beat your ass type of guy. I'm about 5.5 hours in the game with that character. I have a solo playthrough character where I'm playing as, I believe it's a Twergar. They're like the blue skinned dwarf. And that character is a druid that I'm playing on my own. That's Druid. And then I have a third character that's a half orc barbarian, just fucking kills everything. Thrill of the kill, brutal character, going the more evil route, you could say, even though evil's sort of subjective in this game. And that character is probably the farthest. That character is probably right around another like 15 hours. So I guess I'm actually a bit more like 35 hours into the game, but that character's like 15 or 20 hours in, actually. They're pretty far in. Uh, and their name is Munko. Uh, I was gonna name him Monkey, but I thought that would just be that's stupid. Who's named Monkey? Munko. Now that's a name. But anyway, so all three of my playthroughs are actually progressing quite differently, especially my solo playthrough, which is a druid and is actually coming to a quite nice resolution of many of the conflicts in the game, like sort of bringing everybody together in a way that is probably seen as like the good way to play the game. And then Munko, which is just totally fucking evil, like completely leading a bunch of, goblins to murder people and stuff. Just scum of the earth type of shit going on there. And I have to say, I really, really like the story and the characters and the world in the game. The actual stuff that I do not like is basically everything D&D. Like, for record, this game is definitely made for D&D dweebs, and I recognize that. And I think a lot of the people playing the game are going to be D&D dweebs that understand this shit already. However, the game had a peak concurrent of 800,000 players, which means that sales of this game are easily surpassing 1 million players, and the game is going to come out on PS5, and that's going to easily have 1 million people, I'm sure, if not more. And I can guarantee you that with all of those fucking people playing the game, I am not the only one that has not played D&D and doesn't know shit about D&D, okay? I am not. I understand the game was made for the D&D dweebs, but I am not the only person. This might be copium, okay? Who knows? Maybe I'm the only fucking human being on the planet that hasn't played D&D that's interested in Baldur's Gate 3, but I really doubt that's the case. And this game does a terrible job of explaining D&D shit. It really does just go into the game assuming that you've played D&D. And I think that's really bad for game design. And this is, going to be L take or whatever. People are not going to be happy about it, but it's true. I think that, and Asmongold, he said this before, and I completely agree with him. I think it is a failure on the game design side of things if the player ever has to navigate out of your game to figure something out. And I have had to watch numerous Extra Life videos and shit like that to find out why I was not hitting, I wasn't doing damage, why I was getting absolutely stinkied, because I was just playing the game like Divinity Original Sin 2, their last title that I know of. I put in like 200 hours into, absolutely love and adore the game, and that is not how this game works at all. Let me give you a couple examples of things that are not at all explained in the game in any way, shape, or form, and maybe you'll understand. Okay, so first things first is take Shadowheart. She's a companion you get very early in the game, and she's a cleric. And one of the cleric cantrips, which this is also a whole D&D thing, is you have your cantrip skills, and these are essentially like spells you can cast infinitely that are separate from your actual spells that'll be level 1, 2, 3, whatever. And those spells require spell slots, which you have a limited amount. And I'll talk about that mechanic in a second. But so the cleric has a cantrip that's called Radiant Flame or something along those lines. It casts a beam of light of like holy judgment, and it burns the target. Now, you would think if you played a video game, right? If you just played a video game, which this is, that, that would, probably take into account like their fire resist and like their armor. And then that's how it would decide if you're going to hit and the damage, as well as where you are. Well, you'd be fucking wrong, because it's what's called like a dex save or something like that. And basically what that means is it doesn't do any of that. What happens is, instead of using armor or something like a normal, skill would do in a video game, or fire resist, which makes sense, right? It uses their dexterity. So a lot of characters in the early, like a lot of the enemies early game just have a lot of dexterity. And as a result, this fucking attack never hits, dude. Never. Ever, ever, ever. I've never seen higher than a 60% chance. And that's with me like casting bless on myself and like having high ground and just like stacking every possible advantage known to man. And that shit will still be at like a 60%. And you know it. I'm getting the 40. That shit is missing. Or it's hitting and it's just, not hitting. And the reason for that is because, which the game never tells you any of this, that I guess when you do it, you roll your dice or, the damage it's going to do or whatever, your odds to hit, and then they roll their dice to save them from the damage. And if theirs is higher, then I'm pretty sure it doesn't hit. And then it has a like, look, I even looked this shit up and I still can't properly explain it to you because this shit is so weird from other video games. But like their dexterity gives them a bonus onto whatever they roll to assist them in not getting hurt by it. But this mechanic is never explained. And there's a lot of skills in the game that are like this, by the way. It's not just this one. There's a lot of skills that are like a constitution skill check or save or whatever the fuck they call it, or a dexterity save or a wisdom save, right? And the only way you figure any of this shit out in the game, because the game will never explain it to you, is you have to do the attack, probably miss, maybe you hit, who knows. Then you have to go to the combat log and you have to hover over the damage and it will tell you, oh yeah, you rolled this, and then you had these extra points, and then they had these points, and they rolled this, and that's why, it missed. But the game never tells you about the combat log, so how the fuck would you know that? Luckily, I had my buddy Josh, who is a D&D dweeb, and for the record, when I say D&D dweeb, I'm not like, it's not some derogatory thing, you guys don't need to get your fucking little skill books and torches or pitchforks or whatever. I call myself a huge nerd in my reactions, right? Me calling somebody else a nerd or a dweeb or a geek or a dork or whatever, it's just for comedic effect, okay? Don't get fucking butthurt about it, you dweebs. But luckily I had my buddy Josh who told me about that, but this is like bad game design, in my opinion, because it's not telling you any of this stuff. And you have to navigate to this thing that it doesn't tell you about. And it's made even worse when you play on controller because, like I said, when I'm playing with my cousin, I'm playing split screen. We're both on controller. It's made even worse because in order to even access the combat log, you have to hold the right trigger and then go to a dedicated section for combat log and see it. And so like this is going to be a big problem with people playing on PlayStation 5, and that's going to be a ton of people when that drops, I'm sure, because of the hype around it. So that can be very, very frustrating when you don't understand this stuff and then you essentially have to go watch YouTube videos to find out why all your shit is fucking missing. And it's even more frustrating when like you don't understand how the system works. You're like, okay, so this guy's on high ground, I'm on low ground, it says I have disadvantage. I have a lower chance to hit. I can see that. But what does that actually mean? The only way to find out what that actually means is to proceed with the attack while you're at disadvantage and then probably miss, probably get shit on by that guy because, he has high ground and now you're in a bad position because you took the shot. And then you have to go to the combat log and you have to see, okay, so disadvantage means, it's a -1 or a -2 or whatever for my roll, or he gets an extra +1 or whatever the calculation is, right? And you just have to kind of remember all of this shit. There's no like, I was thinking there's like some sort of tutorial that you could do, right? That would like walk you through it. And there's really not. Like, you get a little bit of a tutorial at the very beginning when you're on the ship, and that's about it, dude. And that doesn't explain a lot of the stuff in the game. So that's kind of my biggest issue with the game, is just that it assumes that the player is a lot smarter than they are, right? At least in my case. Because normally, I like to think of myself as a bit of a gamer, I've played a lot of video games. I've played a lot of very hard video games from all sorts of genres. And I would probably consider myself in the top, 1 to 5% of gamers in terms of skill out there, but a lot of this shit has nothing to do with your video game knowledge and everything to do with D&D knowledge, a completely separate entity that a lot of people who are playing games don't do at all. And now I know like D&D is more popular now probably because of like stuff like Critical Role, which I don't even know what the fuck that is. I just hear D&D dweebs talk about it, so I'm guessing it's like a D&D thing, like a show or something like that. But it's kind of one of those things where I just think the game needs to do a little bit better job of being a video game than a sort of like D&D interpretation, copy paste. Uh, and another good example of that is the long rest system. I just don't like it. I understand that's how it is in D&D, but I just think it feels bad because it's not explained to you. All they say for long rest is that it uses some supplies and that it will restore your spells and restore your short rests and restore your health. Well, that all sounds good and dandy. What it doesn't tell you is that it passes time in the game. Well, I mean, I guess it does. It tells you the day will end, but it doesn't tell you the repercussions of passing a day. If I play Fallout and I rest, I just stand there like a psychopath and I skip 3 weeks of in-game time. You know what I change? Nothing. You know why I change nothing? Because, sure, it's not realistic, but it's better for gameplay, right? It feels real bad, especially like if I was playing hardcore or something, right? In Fallout New Vegas and I need to sleep. Oh, it feels real bad. I have to sleep and now I just missed out on a storyline. Well, that's what Baldur's Gate does to you, baby. And let me tell you, some of the classes just fucking suck cock with no abilities. The cleric I was talking about sucks the fattest of nuts. Just terrible. Without any skills. Without any spells. And they don't get a ton of spell slots. So, you basically have this character that's fucking useless. Other than, when you need heals and buffs and stuff like that. But even then, it creates this gameplay dynamic where the player is afraid to use their abilities, and I think that's just bad game design. And I just don't like the system. I think Divinity Original Sin 2 is way better with the cooldown based system because that fits perfectly in a video game. And maybe, this system works really well in D&D, but it doesn't work very well in this game because you don't explain properly that people can miss out on things by doing long rests. Essentially, how the game works is it works on a checkpoint-based system, at least according to all the research that I've done on this. It works on a checkpoint-based system, and as you do things naturally in the world, you will hit certain checkpoints that it doesn't tell you, but then when you do a long rest, things will progress. And that can be furthering anything, as simple as furthering relationships and dialogues and stuff like that with your companions to something far more severe like this dude was alive and now he's dead. Or this person was here that you were supposed to meet with and now they've left because time has passed. And the problem with this system is that it does not accurately convey that information to the player. And so the player may not even realize that they're missing out on all of this content. And some people might think that's cool. Some fucking freaks out there that want to replay a 100+ hour game, might think that's cool. But you guys are psychopaths, okay? It is not cool. Maybe it would be a little cool if they told you, hey, just so you know, when you long rest, it will advance shit. So, be careful with it. But they don't. So as a result, I was talking to my cousin, and his solo playthrough, he long rested 6 or 7 times. At the beginning of the game because he didn't understand that it was, actually having consequences. And so then when we played ours together, he's like, oh wow, this dude was fucking dead for me. Oh wow, this chick wasn't even here for me. She was long gone type of thing. So I just don't think it's a really good system. And then on top of that, I just don't think it's a good system to keep the player afraid of using abilities. Now you can make the argument, which I'm sure many will, Well, Zach, the spells are very strong. And as a result of the spells being very strong, you have to have them use this finite resource. And I would say you're fucking wrong. Spells are very strong in Divinity Original Sin 2. And guess what, motherfucker? Those work on cooldowns. Yeah. Crazy, right? It's like we have a 1-to-1 comparison or something. And you know what feels even fucking worse? When I'm playing my cleric and I cast Radiant Bolt or whatever, which is supposed to be this attack that does a significant amount of damage and it uses a spell slot, so it's a very big commitment whenever you're using these spells, and I have an 85% chance to hit and I fucking miss. That feels like a big fat kick in the ball sack. And I know that the D&D dweebs out there, they love that shit. They love, oh my god, I rolled a 1 and now my character dies and we all die. That's so fun. That's not fucking fun in a video game, okay? It's not fun, dude. It doesn't feel good when you have this finite resource with spell slots and then you're finally committing, like, yes, I'm going to use this level 2 spell slot. I'm going to cast this skill. It's going to be fucking sick. And it just whiffs like a fucking fart in the wind, just a little. Oh shit. Well, there goes that spell slot. That feels really bad. And it's like, oh well, now if I want to get it back, I have to do a long rest. But if I do a long rest, guess what? Yep, shit's progressing, and I might miss out on content. So you're not only afraid to use your abilities, but you're afraid to do the long rest, and it's just a bad system in a video game. I think the cooldown system would work way better. And if you're saying, well, the spells are too strong, Zach, the spells are too strong. It's designed around you using the cantrips and you using skills and stuff like that, and like skills reset on short rest. I would say, once again, you're wrong. And second, okay, then keep the cooldown system, but just have it not go on not refresh the cooldowns out of combat. Boom, problem solved. You have a video game system where you still are committing to a cooldown and stuff like that with your abilities, so they'll probably not be in the next fight. Like, let me give you an example, okay? You have Hold Person. This is a spell, has a chance to miss. That is a level 2 spell, and it will just hold a dude in place, and then he's immobilized, and you'll do extra damage with melee hits on him, right? Pretty strong ability, I agree. Pretty fucking strong. It used a level 2 spell slot. What if instead we made it an 8-round cooldown, an 8-turn cooldown, and that doesn't refresh after combat? Now there's still a commitment to using it, because you use it, and let's say it misses. You still have to go 8 turns without it. And this, let's say you use it, and then you kill the enemy that turn anyway, right? So you're out of combat. Combat is over. It will still be on cooldown for, 7 turns. And then the next time you get in combat, that cooldown is up again, 7 turns. And if you want to reset it, you want to reset all of your cooldowns faster, that's when you can do a long rest. I think that system works far better. Or maybe even just have the spell slots and then have the cooldown after you use the spell slots. Like, I don't know if that would be too strong, but I'm saying you can make cooldowns work. And I think Divinity Original Sin 2 is just a perfect case for why cooldowns can work just fine. And I'm just not a fan of the long rest system, bro. That's what I'm saying. I just don't think it's a good system. I think it would be totally fine if there were no negative repercussions other than the resources, because it's easy enough to come by the resources, right? On normal mode, it's only 40. On Tactician, it's 80, so that's like a much bigger commitment, when you have to go through that. But even that isn't like crazy. I don't know, dude. I'm just not a fan of the system. And I'm very excited for when mods just remove it entirely, because I just don't think it's good for the game. I've talked to D&D people about it, and I know D&D people don't mind it, and they're like, oh, it feels so good. My friend Josh, he likened it. He's like, it's like you're edging, man. You're edging, and like you want to use the ability, but you don't because you use a spell slot. And then like when you finally cast that fucking, magic missile, ooh, ooh, it feels so good. And I just don't agree. I don't agree. I think that the majority of the cantrips in the game don't feel good to use. The only exception to that is Eldritch Blast. That shit, that shit feels real good. I'm not gonna lie. Eldritch Blast slaps ass. That skill has a ton of impact, but that's the only cantrip that I actually think is like really solid. Like, sure, Firebolt isn't bad, but it doesn't feel good. Like, it's not a very satisfying ability to use, and you're using it so much, especially like if you're playing Shadowheart, for example, right? Like you using it all the time because Radiant Fire or whatever it's called sucks the fattest nutsack known to man. So Lord knows you're not using that shit. And then like as a druid, our cantrips suck fat nutsack too. It's like, okay, I can use Thorn Whip, which can be fun. Thorn Whip can be fun if you get under somebody on height and you know, pull them off the roof or whatever. That's pretty fun. It's funny, it's entertaining. That feels good. But like most of the time, it doesn't feel good. It's like, oh, 1 to, 5 damage or whatever, and I just pull them to me a little bit. It doesn't feel good. The poison one is like a constitution save, so that thing will never fucking hit. That never hits. Ever, ever, ever. Against anyone, and you have to get right up in their balls to use it. And the other one is just like an augment to your attacks, right? Which is like, it's okay. It's probably the best out of all of them, to be honest, but it's not like a fun or interesting cantrip. You see what I'm saying? Like, the cantrips aren't good. What's good is this actual skills and the spells, and unfortunately those are using this finite resource. So yeah. Anyway, I'm rambling a lot. Those are my L takes. I won't be surprised if this video goes like the Elden Ring one, but all in all, I don't think Baldur's Gate 3 is overrated. I think it's a very good game, feature complete. I think it has some issues, some of which are subjective, like the D&D stuff I'm not a big fan of. Some of it is objective. There's quite a lot of bugs and weird things with the co-op play. The split screen is definitely, it needs better like performance updates because some of the areas really struggle in split screen. Even on a 3080 Ti, and a 5800X, they are struggling. But yeah, overall, I think it's quite good. It's quite a good game, and if I had to rate it right now, I would say I'm thoroughly enjoying my experience. It's probably like at least a 9, if not like a 9.5. Like I think it's really, really good. I don't want people to like see me ranting on these little problems that I have with the game and be like, oh, he's a fucking hater, which people probably will because they're not going to watch 28 minutes, right, of me ranting about it. But I still really like the fucking game, and I'm still like constantly excited to play it and like wanting to play it. It's just there's some little things that get fucking annoying, that I'm not a fan of. But anyway, thanks for stopping by. Have a good one. Bye bye.